The story begins by showing Norwegian troops sent to maintain security in Narvik, a city prone to invasion. During the Second World War, Norway decided to be a neutral party and allowed German and British troops to buy iron ore in the city of Narvik. Usually, this iron ore was used as raw material to make weapons of war. At that time, one of the soldiers sent was Gunnar Toft. He was a local because Narvik was his hometown. During the rest period, he asked permission from his superiors to see his family. As a public servant, he rarely spent time with his family. So whenever the opportunity arose, Gunnar would make the most of it. What's more, he hadn't played with his son in a long time, and he hadn't seen his wife in a long time. Fortunately, his superior gave him permission, and he hurried off to see his wife. Gunnar stopped by the hotel where he worked first to tell her that he was going home. This was his wife, Ingrid. Apart from working as a waitress, she was also trusted as a translator. Ingrid can master various languages, including English and German. On that day, there happened to be a meeting between the mayor of Narvik and the Nazis and the British to discuss the transaction of iron ore. At this meeting, Ingrid was asked to be an interpreter for Nazi officials. When she found out that her husband was coming home, she was so excited that she promised to come home early, so that their meeting could last longer. Afterward, Gunnar went home to the house just behind the hotel. He was happy to see his son, Ole, playing with his grandfather. Gunnar then gave his son a toy which immediately made his son look happy. Even though his father is busy defending the country, he still gets love. On the other hand, Ingrid was still working. Then on the sidelines of work, a British official approached her to ask about the contents of her conversation with Nazi officials. As a person of integrity, she said that she was only a translator and had no right to divulge other people's secrets, especially since this had to do with the World War. In the evening, Ingrid returned home and immediately vented her longing for Gunnar. Seeing this, Gunnar's father invited his grandson to sleep in the next room so that the couple could enjoy their time together. However, when it was midnight, Gunnar again said goodbye to Ingrid because he had to immediately gather at the duty post. As a soldier, it was only natural that he should be willing to sacrifice time with his family to defend the sovereignty of his country. When he left the house, he saw the flames in the harbor. Instantly, he rushed to the scene of the fire. On the way, the commander said that Nazi soldiers had burned a British ship. Upon arriving at the harbor, Gunnar was shocked to see Norwegian and Nazi soldiers pointing guns at each other. The situation in Norway had been quite safe, but somehow the situation suddenly became tense. In this tense moment, the Norwegian commander army asked the Nazi commander for an explanation as to why they were attacking the British near Norwegian territory. Apparently, the conflict between Germany and Britain was heating up, so they attacked at various points where there were British soldiers. After hearing his explanation, the Norwegian commander asked his men to return to the barracks. Here, they decided not to retaliate against the attacks and maintain Norway's stance as a neutral party. On the way, some soldiers were seen fleeing as the city of Narvik fell to the Nazis. They didn't want to become Hitler's subordinates. Seeing this, Gunnar prevented his close friend from running away, because it is the act of cowardly people. In the morning, the remaining Norwegian troops moved towards the city border. Under the orders of the deputy commander, they would provide security in certain areas. At the border, Hitler's followers told them to return to their base. However, the Norwegian troops refused the order. Because they were outnumbered, the Nazi soldiers finally didn't dare to prevent them. Elsewhere, Ingrid, who had just started working, was approached again by a British official. The man then asked for her help to open access from the back door. Apparently, she was assigned to pick up her boss at the hotel without being caught by Nazi henchmen. Moreover, a number of Nazi soldiers were conducting a cleanup operation, where they were assigned to arrest 2 British officials who were hiding there. Therefore, they decided to take over the hotel. Secretly, Ingrid helped the British officials to escape, but they were surprised by the arrival of several Nazi soldiers. Here, Ingrid tried to distract them by offering them coffee. Afterward, she told the British officials to escape secretly. In addition, she also asked her co-workers to take them to an empty hut on a hill. In that place, the 2 British officials could hide for a while. Actually, Ingrid helped them not because she favored the British, but so that no major conflict would occur in her country. After returning from work, Ingrid told her father-in-law that the Nazis had taken control of Narvik. Knowing this, the old man told her to go to another city with her son, and he would follow later when the situation possible. Without wasting time, they went to the harbor to cross by ship. But unfortunately, the harbor was already closed by the Nazi army, so they finally decided to use the train. On the other side, Gunnar and his colleagues arrived at a bridge. Not long after, the commander asked Gunnar about the location of the dynamite on the bridge. However, being only a corporal, Gunnar wasn't too familiar with the dynamite laying strategy. As a result, he contacted his father, who had just taken Ingrid and Ole on the train. Gunnar asked about the location of the dynamite on the bridge because his father had worked in the military and knew about the location of the dynamite. What's more, the dynamite had been installed a long time ago. As it turned out, his father knew where the dynamite was located on the third pillar of the bridge. After knowing the location, the commander said that Norway was no longer neutral, so they had to counterattack the Nazis. First of all, he told Gunnar to blow up the dynamite so that the bridge would collapse, because if the bridge was damaged, then the trains couldn't pass through. With this, the Nazi troops could not bring iron ore out of Narvik. Before the mission was underway, the Norwegian troops noticed a movement of people at the end of the bridge. Apparently, they were residents who were forced down by Nazi troops. They immediately helped the residents. As it turned out, one of them was Ingrid and Ole. Here, Gunnar also met his wife and child at an inopportune time. He then told them to hide in the tunnel, while he and his colleagues would carry out the bridge blasting mission. Gunnar climbed the bridge pillar that his father was referring to. Then he set the dynamite fuse, but suddenly there was shooting. Despite being attacked, Gunnar still managed to install the fuse. Then he told his partner to light the fuse as quickly as possible. Although the dynamite was blown up, the bridge was still strong. Meanwhile, Nazi soldiers found Ingrid and Ole, who were hiding. Then both of them were brought back to the city of Narvik. While passing the bridge, she saw Gunnar, who was taken prisoner by the enemy. But there was nothing Ingrid could do to save her husband. Arriving in the city, the woman was awaited by her in-laws. In addition, she was asked by Nazi officials to be a translator. Inside the hotel, the mayor protested to the Nazis for attacking the Narvik city. Even though Norway is a neutral country, with Ingrid's help, the Nazi official said what the Nazis did was to expel the British. He promised to protect civilians from outside attacks. But of course, this was all nonsense. The mayor didn't want to continue the discussion because he found the Nazis' words untrusted. After the conversation, Ingrid asked a Nazi official for help in freeing her husband. The official promised to help Gunnar, since Ingrid had helped him as a translator. In the morning, Ingrid's co-worker met her at home. She delivered a message from a British official, where Ingrid was asked to meet these people. She said she had something important to say. Although she was afraid of being caught by the Nazis, Ingrid still met the British official, because after all, her country and Britain are close allies, so they had to help each other. Upon arrival at the cottage, the British official conveyed his purpose in calling Ingrid. They wanted her to become a spy and gather information about the Nazi defense strategy. This information was urgently needed so that the British military could expel the Germans from Narvik. Although somewhat hesitant, Ingrid agreed to the request. Upon returning to the hotel, she delivered drinks to Nazi officials. In this room, she saw a defense map belonging to Germany, but she didn't have a chance to take it. Not long after, the sound of missile fire was heard. Apparently, British warships attacked the port of Narvik. Knowing this, Ingrid rushed home. She immediately took her son to hide in the basement of the house. Other townspeople also scattered to take refuge in the basement. In the evening, Ingrid, her son and father-in-law were able to get out of the basement. They thought the battle was over. However, to confirm the truth, they went to the hotel. In this place, they saw many wounded Nazi soldiers. Ingrid also overheard German soldiers saying that the British warships had retreated. In addition, due to this surprise attack, several German warships were destroyed and sunk. Afterward, Ingrid was told by her boss to help treat the wounded soldiers. Although forbidden by her father-in-laws, she had no other choice as she had to work professionally. Then she went to the guest room to get some blankets that would be used to cover the wounded soldiers. She used this opportunity to sneak into the room a high-ranking Nazi. This woman intended to take the Nazis' defense map. Ingrid also could steal the map. Not wanting to waste time, she went straight to the hut on the hill. Once there, she immediately handed over the map to British officials. They also thanked Ingrid. With this map, British troops could find out the weaknesses of the Nazi defense. They immediately sent the information to the British military. Afterward, Ingrid hurried home, but he was stopped by a Nazi soldier. The woman was considered violating curfew rules. Ingrid then said that she was a hotel maid while showing her identification after an inspection, and nothing suspicious was found. Then Ingrid walked to the door of her house, but suddenly her house was hit by a missile. Finding her house in ruins, Ingrid rushed to find the whereabouts of her son and father-in-laws. As 4 weeks passed, the Nazi army strengthened its defenses in Narvik by building trenches to avoid enemy fire. Gunnar and some of his fellow prisoners were forced to do community service to transport weapons and ammunition to the trench. Due to fatigue, one of the Norwegian soldiers fell down. Gunnar encouraged his comrade to get up again, and his efforts were successful. When they arrived at the trench, they saw how cruel the Nazi soldiers were. They deliberately starved the prisoners. Even some sick Norwegian soldiers were left lying in the trenches. Having not eaten for days, Gunnar secretly stole food from Nazi soldiers. Not long after, there were gunshots fired into the trench. In the midst of the battle, several prisoners tried to escape. Gunnar and other prisoners were freed by the joint Norwegian, British, and French soldiers. Afterward, Gunnar helped the Allied soldiers to finish off the Nazi troops. A battle in the trenches was inevitable. Then, Gunnar shot the enemy soldiers in silent mode from behind. In a short time, the combined army defeated the Nazis and took control of the trench. At this moment, Gunnar met his commander again. His superior was very happy that Gunnar was still alive. However, he brought bad news and said that Gunnar's father had been killed by a British missile attack. Hearing this, Gunnar was devastated and regretful for not being able to protect his own father. To make amends, he wouldn't let this happen to his wife and son. Meanwhile, many townspeople were hiding in bunkers. They were afraid that there would be another attack. In this place, Ingrid changed the bandages on Ol's body. Her son was injured when a missile hit their house. Not long after, Ingrid's coworker approached her. Her friend told her that Nazi officials had asked her to go to the hotel immediately to become an interpreter again. Ingrid rushed to the hotel and left Ol with her colleague. At the hotel, the mayor of Narvik is negotiating with Nazi officials. The Germans threatened not to give food to the townspeople if the British officials were not found. They accused a traitor of giving information to the British. However, the mayor said that he knew nothing about it. The threat angered the mayor and he refused to continue the negotiations. Just as they want to leave the room, there was another attack. Afterward, Ingrid had to return home. Before leaving, the Nazi official asked her to stay at the hotel. Apparently, he secretly liked Ingrid. However, the offer was refused. Shortly afterward, Ingrid arrived at the bunker. At night, the sound of gunfire was heard again. Ingrid woke up from her sleep. Because she was already awake, she checked her son's condition. Unexpectedly, Ol had a high fever. Then Ingrid took her son to the hotel to be examined by a Nazi doctor. She had the courage to go to the hotel in the midst of a tense war situation. Upon arrival at the hotel, Ingrid asked a Nazi official for help so that her son could be examined by a doctor. The woman said she would tell the hiding of British officials as long as Ol could be healed. In the end, he and the Nazis made a deal. She said the Englishmen were in an empty hut on a hill. The Nazi soldiers rushed to the place, while Ol was treated by a Nazi doctor. On the other hand, the combined army would attack the Nazis' last defense. They planned to take over the enemy cannon hidden in the tunnel on the hill. If this mission is successful, they will reclaim the city of Narvik from the hands of the German army. Then these soldiers moved forward to the battle line. On the other hand, the Nazi soldiers had prepared cannons and machine guns to repel the attack. The relentless fire from the enemy scared the Norwegian soldiers. They turned around and tried to escape from the battlefield. Seeing this, the commander ordered his soldiers return to the front line. He threatened to shoot them all if they acted like cowards. Eventually, the Norwegian soldiers returned to the battlefield. Meanwhile, Gunnar and two of his colleagues were looking for a safer way into the tunnel. The three of them saw enemy soldiers firing on the Norwegian troops and their allies. Secretly, they'd taken down the Nazi soldier. Afterward, they could get into the tunnel. But Nazi soldiers operating cannons saw them, and in the end, the two sides opened fire each other. In addition, the combined armies were still fighting with the enemy. In the end, the Nazi troops were defeated. Then, Gunnar informed his commander that the enemy's cannons had been destroyed. Knowing this, the commander ordered his soldiers to take down the Nazi flag on the hill. This change of flag signaled that the Nazi army had been defeated. After a long battle and many casualties, the Norwegian army back to control of the Narvik city. On the other hand, the defeat at the Battle of Narvik became the first defeat on the Nazi side during the Second World War. With this defeat, Nazi officials decided to return to Germany. They could no longer defend the Narvik city and had to leave immediately before the joint army entered the city. At the hotel, the Nazi official invites Ingrid to come to Germany. He wants her to start a new life with him, but she refuses. Ingrid, who was still Gunnar's wife, would faithfully wait for her husband's return. Hearing this refusal, the Nazi official informed her that Gunnar had died in battle. Instantly, Ingrid's feelings were crushed. She still couldn't believe her husband was dead. Then she went to her boss and vented her sadness. The boss tried to encourage Ingrid to stay strong in life. He told his employee move to another city, because he was afraid that the townspeople of Narvik would consider her as a traitor. This is because Ingrid was considered to be close to the enemy, because she was a translator for Nazi officials. After the Germans left, the townspeople celebrated their victory. They also welcomed the Norwegian army and its allies who had liberated the Narvik city from the atrocities of the Nazi forces. Amidst the excitement of the townspeople, Gunnar didn't see his wife. He decided to go home, and of course Ingrid and Ole were still in the house. Ingrid was very surprised that her husband was still alive. She was grateful and happy that Gunnar had come home safely. After letting go, Gunnar asked his wife why Ingrid didn't join him in celebrating the victory of the Norwegian army in the streets of the city. She told him that she was forbidden by the people. The reason was that she was considered an enemy, because she was close to Nazi officials. However, she said that she was only a translator. Knowing this, Gunnar was really disappointed. He couldn't understand why his wife was helping the enemy when he was fighting to defend his country. In fact, he also considered his wife a traitor. On the one hand, Ingrid had no other choice and was forced to become a Nazi interpreter. This couple's even quarreled. As they argued, Gunnar suddenly heard the sound of fighter jets. As it turns out, Nazi troops are attacking the Narvik city to avenge their humiliating defeat. When the attack stopped, Gunnar saw a Norwegian soldier injured by an enemy missile. He tries to help him, but unfortunately it's too late. Meanwhile, Ingrid takes Ole to the harbor and plans to flee to another city without her husband. Here, Gunnar is looked at care and lets his wife go. At the harbor, many townspeople are already evacuating. They are afraid that the Nazis will attack again. However, they weren't happy with Ingrid's presence, and some even pushed her to the ground. When she packed her suitcase, she was shocked by her husband come. Gunnar decided to accompany his wife and son to flee to another city. Gunnar realized that what Ingrid doing was just an attempt to survive. Finally, he apologized to his wife and promised to continue protecting his small family. After that, the movie ended.